Good evening. My name is Rodney Strong, and I'm the chair of the Hamilton County Democratic Party. I would like to welcome all of you to the second evening of our two mayoral candidate forums that are being sponsored by the Hamilton County Democratic Party and the Chattanooga Young Democrats. Tonight, you will hear from four candidates for mayor for the city of Chattanooga. Our first forum was broadcast and recorded on the HCDP Facebook page, where it is available for you to view if you weren't able to watch it live. The rules for our forum are that each candidate will be given 2 minutes at the beginning to introduce themselves and to make a brief opening statement. Following the opening statements, questions will be posed to the candidates and they will have up to 2 minutes to respond. You may suggest questions by using the comments section on your Facebook page and typing in the question you would like to ask. When we reach the last 15 minutes or so, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to make a closing argument. The Chattanooga Young Democrat President, Megan McLaren, will be our timekeeper tonight, and the time limits for each round will be strictly observed. Our moderator for this evening is Dr. Michelle Deerdorf, the head of the UTC Political Science and Public Service Department. We will now turn the program over to her to call on the candidates and for the beginning of our forum. Thank you for being with us.
I'd like to welcome everyone today, and it should be an exciting evening as we listen to different visions for our city and help us make our decisions as it comes time to vote. And so, of course, we're encouraging everyone to vote. And so our first candidate this evening will be Monty Bruell.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Rodney, and the Hamilton County Democratic Party for giving us the opportunity to share our platforms with you this evening. My name is Monty Bruell, and I want to be your mayor. We know what it's like to be in a city that's run from the top down, that benefits just a privileged few. Well, I want to change that. I want to upset the apple cart. I want to fight for everyday Chattanoogans, people who love their city, love their neighborhood, want the best for their families and their children. That's what it's all about. So I'm asking every voter to stand up and be counted. Don't give away your power because you have a lot of it. Now, we all know how much money is in this race. And this week I've been asked a lot, well, Monty, can you win? Well, the answer is, of course I can win. Clemson football coach Dabo Swinney is famous for saying, it's only unthinkable if you don't think it. So it's up to you whether or not I win. If you will go to the polls and you will vote for me, I will be the next mayor of Chattanooga. And if you stay at home, if you give away your power, if you don't stand up and be counted, well, then I won't be your mayor. When we look at our city, we have incredible issues. We have huge income and wealth disparities. We've got a 35% child poverty rate. 2/3 of all households in poverty are headed by single women. So if we're going to change things, we're going to have to come to the rescue of single moms, their kids, and families. That's where the poverty is. So why is it that we pretend we don't know where it is, and then we just sit around and we accept the same old, same old? So I don't want you to continue to be Charlie Brown expecting Lucy to let you kick the football, because it's never happened in the past. It's not happening now, and it won't happen in the future. So
Thank you.
If you want a champion, I'm Monty Bruell, and I want to be your mayor.
Our next candidate is Wade Hinton.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Rodney. And thank you to the Hamilton County Democratic Party for hosting us this evening. It's an exciting time. Today is the first day of early vote. It was a beautiful day to get out and express your choice of for mayor and council and so many other incredible issues right now. So let me start by saying I'm Wade Hinton, and I am running to be the next mayor of Chattanooga. I am a native of Chattanooga. I was born and raised in a community called the West Side. My mom raised me there with my two older sisters. She taught me a lot of things, like standing up for what's right. She also taught me the importance of service and giving to others. That sense of service has always been a part of who I am. And so even when I left the city after graduating high school, I attended public schools my entire life here. Even when I left the city, I thinking I would never come back because as much as my neighborhood embraced me, as much as I had that sense of belonging, I didn't think the entire city had that same sense of belonging and embracing of who I am and folks that look like me. But it was service that called me back here. It was service that said, if you know, it wasn't enough to complain about issues if you weren't going to get in the game. So for 20 years, I've been involved in issues, certainly on the business side, you know, been at the table to help bring more jobs here, been at the table to help create more opportunities, but more so focused on issues around inclusion and diversity and equity. Before, those were buzzwords: inclusion, diversity, and equity. And as mayor, just know that when we talk about leading and creating change and improving the opportunities for our community, our work in our administration will be rooted in equity. We first want to focus on getting through this pandemic. That's going to be job number one, but we got to do this in a way that is not just allowing us to show up stronger, but to show up in an equitable way. And that's how we're going to do this. In Chattanooga, I'm going to ask you humbly to support me and my candidates, to have your vote so we can make history and make real change here in Chattanooga. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next candidate is Andrew McLaren.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much, Megan and Rodney, for having me in the Hamilton County Democratic Party. All of the candidates in this race have really phenomenal resumes. I think that my resume might be a little bit light compared to theirs, to be fully transparent. However, I'm an ideas guy. I'm an avid reader, and I'm a bridge builder. And what our campaign is about is livable wages. We've got 40% of city employees being paid below the federal poverty line. Our firefighters are being paid $10 an hour, risking their lives. I want to create a plastic bag tax that's going to charge 10 cents per plastic bag. That's going to help our environment be sustainable. And we're going to take that 10 cents from the plastic bag tax and invest it into early childhood education, which is so paramount. We're going to reduce crime. We're already doing gang intervention and getting people livable wages. We're bringing police together to talk to gang members about reducing violence. We're going to get all of our homeless citizens housed. We're going to end the war on the poor and wage a war on poverty, because a lot of our city's problems are from poverty. We're going to fix our infrastructure. We're going to fix CARTA. We're going to get more bus stops. We're going to do a small business task force to help our small businesses recover from this pandemic. And I'm the underdog, but we are electable. I need your vote. I need people to believe. And I think that Americans love a story of somebody persevering through tremendous adversity. And that's something that I learned when I served our country in the Marines all over the world. So thank you so much. And I humbly ask for your vote. I'm Andrew McLaren, and I love the city of Chattanooga.
Thank you. And our final candidate tonight is Kim White.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. As Wade said, today is the first day of early voting, and it sure is important to be able to get our message out. I grew up in Chattanooga. I went to public school, went to Hickson High School. I'm the first in my immediate family to go to college. I lived at home and worked my way through UTC. I left this city for 20 years and worked for a Fortune 500 company and worked on building teams and market share throughout the Southeast. But in 2003, my husband and I, after making three states and 4 city moves, decided that we wanted to put down roots in the city and make a difference. And I came back to this city in 2003 without a job. I'm not politically connected. I don't live on a mountain. I've never been a member of a country club, but I started networking and getting out there, just meeting people to try to figure out how to use my voice. And my first entree with that, I ran Bob Corker's real estate company, 2 million square feet of real estate company. I was a CEO there, and I started getting very involved in the community. I've served on the Erlanger board. I've done anything that you could do at UTC, from the alumni board to the foundation to Governor Haslam appointed me to the UT Board of Trustees. But for the past 11 years, I've been CEO of River City Company, a private nonprofit focused on downtown redevelopment, where we've had a history of great success in our city. Under my watch, we helped recruit $1.2 billion of investment in our city and saw downtown flourish. But at the same time, there are parts of our cities that weren't experiencing the same fortune. And I've been encouraged to actually use my experience and skill sets so we can bring opportunity to every single part of our city. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to growing jobs and putting money into infrastructure so we are able to actually grow our city. We have a great affordable housing policy where we believe that we can bring 700 units of housing on the market. The difference between me and others is I have not only a vision, but a strategy. I've done it. I have a success record, and I look forward to bringing opportunity to every part of the neighborhood, every part of the city.
Thank you. Our first question is going to be around the question of housing. When it comes to the competing desires for affordable housing and economic development, how do you balance the interests of developing a growing city with the concerns of residents who feel like they're being priced out of the market as first-time home buyers or through displacement due to the negative impacts of gentrification? And we're going to begin with Wade Hinton.
Thanks, Michelle. So as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the West Side, and that is, if you were thinking about a place where you can design and be intentional in terms of planning, where whether it's the input or the growth and development and connection to the community, or people will be disconnected, that will be a textbook example. This is a community that had 0 single family housing, where you could not see a path to home ownership. And that same level of intentionality that went to locking folks out is a step for us to be intentional about making sure we're opening up more opportunity. And so for us, we know even during this COVID pandemic, we're seeing a ton of folks being impacted by this affordable housing shortage. And so we've released a plan and policy to address this particular issue in this crisis. So one of the things that we've said we're going to do is make sure that we have a true housing strategy. A part of that, Michelle, is to bring more folks around the table, whether it's C&E and CHA, but also residents around the table to help make decisions and determinations around the strategy and structure that we would move forward with addressing this issue. We would also make sure that we're creating or using the tools that we have in place now, but create more, like the Community Land Trust, to help us address some of these issues. But more importantly, my Office of Equity and Engagement is going to be focused on bringing residents to the table to help us solve these important issues. This will not be something that the city will be able to solve on its own. This will be something that we would bring the community together to do it. I think citizens are tired of us doing things to them. They want us to do things with them. And in the Hinton administration, not only will we be engaging and having those comments and their perspectives shared with us, they'll see their work, they'll see their ideas, they'll see the policy show and how we do this. The last thing I would say is we got to make sure we're getting information out. We cannot have a situation where we continue to have developers come in, offer a grandmother $40,000 for a home, only to flip it and sell it for $100,000. Making sure we get the information out to folks is going to be also very crucial in doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Hi. We're going to make sure that we work with groups like the Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise, Caleb, Unity Group, the NAACP, and we're going to have full participation and transparency. Our administration is going to give everybody an equal spot at the table, whether you're a developer, a landlord, somebody who's paying rent. I want to get the neighborhood associations involved. One thing that I've done is I've worked for the federal government, in the military, and for the State Department, and I think that I can navigate the human terrain with regards to bringing more HUD funding in. I understand that each of our 9 city districts is different and unique, and we need to work at a grassroots level with community activists, with neighborhood leaders, with the neighborhood associations, to make sure that we get full participation and full involvement. We want to make sure that everybody has equity and has an equal opportunity in our city. We're going to stop gentrification. When it comes down to profit, I'm always going to choose people. I'm always going to put humanity over greed. Right now, we're tied for the fastest growing rent increases in the country. And the Chattanooga Times Free Press addressed this. People simply can't afford to live in their houses now. So some people told me we don't have a housing crisis in Chattanooga, we have a wage crisis. And this is, I believe that this is partly true. We need to get livable wages. I think that a lot of the problems why people are being pushed out and gentrification is occurring is because the cost of living has just skyrocketed past to where people can afford to live there. So we're going to focus on getting livable wages for everybody in our city, and then working with CNE, Caleb, the Unity Group, NAACP, the City Council, and grassroots organizations. Thank you so much.
Super. So we're excited about our affordable housing policy. If you look on our website, it's very thorough and in-depth. My background with real estate and development puts me in a unique position to actually execute on some of these plans. We've had a lot of plans, but we haven't been able to execute. The city has over 500 derelict properties, and they've had a land bank that they've never done anything with. It's really, how do we get these on the tax rolls? But we're going to start with the neighborhood up. We're going to use the same way that we plan the downtown from the inside out, but we're going to go from the neighborhood level and really work with neighborhood associations to look at what's needed in each specific neighborhood. And we're going to leverage the properties that the city owns. We're also going to work with partners like Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise and private developers to have an affordability component that fits each specific neighborhood. We plan to put someone in our administration that's solely focused on housing, with the goal of having 700 units of housing during my first term. It's achievable, it's something that's measurable, and it really is all of us working together to solve this issue. The other is we've got to bring opportunity and bring job opportunities, because even though we have an affordable housing crisis, we're 30% below the national average when you come to living costs. So we've got to really work on how we provide opportunities to grow wages. So it's a two-part component, but it will start with the neighborhood first. The way that we're going to build our team is neighborhood, city council up. It's not top down, and we are going to be focused on really helping solve the affordable housing issue in Chattanooga.
Thank you. Our next question will move to the issue of leadership and polarization.
I think you might have got
Monty. I haven't answered the question.
Oh, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I had you down as first in my head. So thank you for interrupting me and reminding me. So please, Monty.
Thank you. I hope all the voters have me first in their heads as well. That I like where this is headed. So I want to start off by saying I am pro-development, but I am for the right kind of development. And one of the problems that we've had in Chattanooga is that we've been fooled by developer wolves, if you will, in sheep's clothing. So when a developer comes to you and says, I really want to help you with affordable housing, and I'm going to give up my margins and yeah, this is for the public good. I'm doing this for everybody. Well, you ought to be somewhat suspicious of that line, because I think history will not show you that developers have tended to think that way. So one of the things that I want to do as mayor, because I will get to appoint half of the Regional Planning Commission, is I want to appoint some non-developers, not because I don't like development, but because I like a lot of different opinions. And right now we have too many developers on the RPC. And I think it's produced some perverse results, if you will, in our community. So let's put someone who's an expert in sustainability on the Development Commission. Let's put a neighborhood association president or maybe a community activist on the Planning Commission. I think that will produce greater conversation. It will produce greater outcomes. And I think that Chattanooga will build a reputation for consensus that will produce not only great results, but actually more affordable housing. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want.
Thank you. Our next question is going to be addressing leadership and polarization. Political polarization is a deep concern across our entire nation, and we see these divides in our own local community as well. Please tell us how your leadership style can help bridge these deep gaps. And we'll begin with Andrew McLaren.
Thank you so much. So during the height of the protest, I recognized that there was a civilian and a law enforcement divide. So I got David Young, who's the president of the Chattanooga Black Police Officers Association, on the line. And I set up the meeting between Cameron Williams, one of the heads of the Black Lives Matter movement, and Police Chief David Roddy, so they could sit down in a coffee shop in the North Shore and try to find common ground. And we've actually been actively bringing in former gang members and active gang members and talking about the Bible and scripture and ideas and getting them to work and telling them, look, you guys put the guns down and the drugs down, and I'm going to get you a job that pays a livable wage doing construction. And one of my friends is an ex-con who was a former drug kingpin, and now he owns a successful construction business. So we can change the narrative. I want to change the culture in the police department and get better officers. Right now, we've got 17% African-American population in the police department. We've got a 34% Black population in our city. I want the police department to better reflect the demographics that are in the community. The way we're going to come together is by changing the culture. One principle that I live my life by is seek to understand before you are understood. We've got to talk to each other. We can't block each other on social media. We have to sit down face to face, get to know each other, find the humanity. And I learned that when I trained the Iraqi army in Iraq, and we would have to go out and do joint missions together. We didn't have a lot of stuff in common, but we had to come together to save each other's lives. And it's the same thing going on here in Chattanooga. We've got the tale of two cities. It's the tale between the haves and the have-nots, people living in poverty, people that are thriving. What we need to do is remember that talent is universal, opportunity is not. We believe in digging everybody out of poverty. We're going to end the war on the poor, and we're going to declare a war on poverty, because a lot of our problems are from people feeling disenfranchised, marginalized, and we're going to make sure that everybody knows that we love them, that we care about them, and we believe in unity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I'm looking at this role as one of civic leadership. It's not a D or an R. It's about how we all come together as a community to solve big problems. And that's how I've worked for the past 17 years in this community. It's how we actually solve issues by coming around the table, put away our political issues and solve problems. The fact that I have a lot of strong Republicans and a lot of strong Democrats on my team, I think speaks to this. A lot of people don't know with River City Company never had any authority. It was, we solved problems by getting people around the table and finding consensus on how we solve issues. And I believe that our city needs that now more than ever. We just need to enlarge the table and make sure that all the voices are being heard. So I think that this is one thing that I have a very unique skill set in, that I have a history of building coalitions and partnerships and listening to different points of view so we can find the win in it for everyone. So our administration will be one that is very inclusive. We want different points of view. That's how we build a city, is that we actually embrace and celebrate the diversity of it. And that's what they will get from my administration.
Monty, please.
I believe that the most important power that a mayor has is the power to convene, to bring people around the table, to share ideas, to solve problems. And as mayor, I will convene smart people from all political spectrums, and I will listen to their recommendations, and I will try as mayor to provide the resources to execute their great ideas. Now, I want to listen to reasonable people, and I want to listen to reasonable views. But the problem we have in our society is that we're too accommodating to some views. We've got to move beyond this crazy world of alternative facts where every wackadoo thinks they have the right to be heard. And that just isn't true. I'm not interested in hearing the latest QAnon conspiracy theory. I'm not interested in hearing, some wild idea about, why we shouldn't have our kids in school wear masks. No. So reasonable people will have a seat at my table, and we will reach reasonable solutions to the problems. But no, I reject the idea that every person has a right to push their bizarre beliefs on me. And so, as mayor of Chattanooga, I'm going to stand up for facts. I'm going to stand up for science. I'm going to stand up for just, the power of intellect. Let's be smart. And then we can have smart people from every political persuasion present their ideas, and we will reach a solution.
So Michelle, I remember I was able to find a letter of recommendation from my guidance counselor from high school years ago, and there's a couple of other things in that scholarship application I won't bring up on this meeting, but in that letter of recommendation, one of the things that she said about me was that Wade likes to bring people around a table. He's collaborative, and that was many years ago. And so when you talk about leadership, that is my style. That's what I do. That's how I lead, period. Now, I'm not going to shy away. I am a Democrat, right? And I say that not for polarization sake. I say that because I want people to know my values, where I stand. I support inclusion. I support equity. I support access and opportunity for folks. But my first job in government was with Claude Ramsey. And so to be able to work and to move issues and move forward, you have to be able to work with everyone. And so as we talk about leadership and polarization, one of the things that we're going to do as mayor is you'll see an Office of Equity and Engagement. And when we talk about equity and engagement, this is not just black or white. This is not just around gender. This is around perspective and worldview. And that means bringing different ideas, different policy positions around the table so we can have the best product for Chattanoogans. We want solutions, but we have to have everyone around the table to help us come up with these solutions. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing. That's been my history. I think people on this call know that. They've been around the table working with me on issues, and that's how they'll see me working as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Our third question deals with the question of violence and policing. What steps do you plan on taking to both reduce gun violence in the city while simultaneously respond to community protests advocating for police reform? How do you balance these competing concerns in our community? And we're going to begin with Kim White.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. It really is a balance. And it boils down to how we create a community trust and conversation. And there's been a lot of conversation that's occurred over the past year that we need to keep continuing. So I think it's manyfold, but one of those is right now the police don't have enough resources to actually recruit and retain and hire the best of the best and minority police officers. And what I'm hearing in the community through the conversations I've had over the past several months is the community wants to see people that look like them, that actually get out of their car and they are part of that neighborhood. That can't happen with the resources that they have right now. The police also need to have resources like mental health professionals and addiction treatment professionals that come alongside them to help deal with issues before they escalate. So that's one side of it, is making sure that they have the resources, that they become part of that community. The second is actually, how do we go out into the community early on and create hope and opportunity in the neighborhoods? How do we do things in the YFD centers? How do we actually interact with some of the young people in the neighborhoods and show them a path? So I think it is resources community-led, and it's resources with the police department, but it's also how do we continue to build on community. One of the things that I've been very excited about during campaigning is how these neighborhood associations I think are strengthening during COVID, because we're talking more on Zoom. There's more conversation going on. So I think we've got to continue the conversation. When there's bad behavior, we have to deal with that, but we also need to create that community of trust.
Please go ahead, Monty.
Okay.
Bruell.
Well, I actually don't believe that issues of changing the way we police and violence and crime are competing interests. Uh, the problem that we have is that we have this system where the police wait until a crime is committed, and then they hunt for the perpetrator, and then they declare victory when they lock them up. Well, that's ridiculous. Poverty itself is one of the biggest root causes of crime. So if we got rid of poverty, I think we'd get rid of a lot of crime. You know, our own police department says that 65% of all burglaries in Chattanooga are the result of some kind of addiction. Well, do we ever treat the addictions of people? No, because that's not what we do. We like to just keep locking up the same poor, addicted people over and over again. And that's not good for them, and it's not good for society. So, can we stop this madness? We don't have competing interests here. What we have is cause and effect. Let's address poverty. Let's address addiction. Let's address many of the social ills that we have. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see a reduction in crime. So that's the first thing that we need to do. And the other thing, and I say this over and over again, is we need a real citizen oversight board so that the police are accountable to the people. We should all be accountable to the people.
So I remember my first check from that I received as a kid, and it was from the city of Chattanooga. It was in a summer youth program that Public Works had in place. And I was 13, 14 years old, and I learned hard work. I learned just how everyone can play a role here in the city. And but what it also, when I look back on it, it shows me intentionality. There are a lot of things that young people could have been doing that summer, but the city was intentional about giving young people opportunities and setting them up for a path of, at some point being able to come back and serve as the city attorney or mayor. If we are intentional about investing in our people, young people early enough, then that will begin to address some of the issues, but they have to know that we believe in them. And so when we talk about trying to address violence, poverty is one of them, but certainly we've got to address issues around mental health and behavioral health. But lastly, I do think it's important that everyone know that as mayor, I'm going to set I'm going to model this at the top, that if you are an officer that believes it's okay to harm someone or to racial profiling is okay, this is not the place for you. And so we're going to make sure that the CPD is an inclusive, equitable department, and that we have a chief that is going to make sure that every person that works with CPD adopts that same approach. I do agree with Kim that we got to diversify our department, but it won't be diversifying our department. That won't be enough. We've got to make sure it's an inclusive culture, because what I know as an expert in this space is you can have diversity, but if you're not intentional about making sure that people have a sense of belonging and have voice, and they feel like they can actually move up in the organization, they're not going to stay. They're not going to give you all they can give. They won't give you their best. And so I want to make sure that I'm sending that message to all of our departments throughout the city, that we want a place that when you step into those doors and work with each other, but also work with our citizens, that this is going to be a place that you belong, that you have a voice, and you can create equity. And again, I'm going to be pushing that as mayor of this city.
Hi. We currently have 452 police officers. We're supposed to be at 500. We've got one cop quitting per week on average. I'm going to increase the salary of every first responder by $10,000 a year. This is actually going to save us money in the long run because we're putting people through an expensive academy and they're leaving to better paying departments at the THP or the county. So we're going to give everybody a livable wage. This is going to help with recruitment, with retention. It's going to reduce civil litigation and misconduct lawsuits. We're going to change the culture in the department. If you're a corrupt officer, if you're racially profiling somebody, you're going to be fired. I'm going to have a zero tolerance policy for this. I'm going to bring in Glenn Scruggs to be our new police chief because I think he gets it. He came from Avondale. He was an outstanding homicide detective, and I think he's brilliant. I went to the Chattanooga Citizens Police Academy so I could learn more about how the police interact with the community. I went on a ride along around Avondale district, and I noticed that only one of the officers she was a black female. The rest of the cops were white. I want to increase diversity. We've got 17% of the CPD is black. Like I said, 34% of the city is African American. We need to work with the youth and development centers. A lot of the kids that are getting arrested, it's from 4 to 7 p.m. They're going out, committing vandalism or breaking the cars. We need to get them into mentorship programs. We need to focus on community involvement, community policing, being proactive and preventative, not just reactive. So we're going to do a lot of mentorship programs. We've already been out in the community and doing gang intervention, giving people a path to redemption. We need to reduce the recidivism rate for when guys get out of prison. And I've contacted Councilwoman Coonrod about this and actually hired 25 people to do unarmed security in Atlanta for Love and Hip Hop. We can get people, once they come out of prison, and let them know that, look, you're not a second-class citizen. You don't have to go back to a life of crime. We're going to put you to work. We're going to get you a livable wage. We care about you, and we're going to give you a path to redemption. Also, I signed a petition for a more robust board. I believe that it's necessary for a more robust board that has subpoena powers and that operates outside of the internal affairs in the police department. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next, as a political scientist, one of the most fascinating things about being in Chattanooga is the very interesting and unique relationship the city has with the county, and the different demographics and the relationships between the two. So I'd like you to talk about this relationship between the city of Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and the way in which in education, policing, public health emergencies, and many other issues, there's a requirement to collaborate with these two governing systems. In light of this, in what ways do you envision your relationship and working with county officials, and how do you plan to effectively advocate for the city? And we are going to begin with Monty.
Well, one of the bizarre things about Tennessee is if you look at our state charter, the state doesn't really recognize cities as being the local governing authorities. It recognizes the counties. And so when resources come from the state of Tennessee, they most usually come through the county. And then there's some, sharing of those resources with cities within those counties. So we have to live within this construct that really doesn't make a lot of sense. So because of that, the city of Chattanooga can decide, we're going to get out of the public school business, the public education business. Well, then the state mandates that the county take it over. And so that creates a whole series of problems. The county and the city don't currently cooperate very well. And I will just be candid here. I think that's because the county mayor and the city mayor don't really have a great personal relationship. I have already met with Mayor Coppinger at the county to say to him that one of the first calls I'm going to make after becoming mayor of Chattanooga is to him, because I want him and I to sit down and determine what the low-hanging fruit is. Where can we cooperate? What things can we do together? And I want to do something that I'm not sure has ever been done. I would like for Mayor Coppinger and me to call a joint session of the city council and the county commission. And I would like for both of us to give speeches that will lay the groundwork for this new spirit of cooperation that we're going to have. So I am looking forward to working with the county. I have the relationships with people at the county, including Mayor Coppinger, and I think we can do a lot of great things together.
So as I mentioned earlier, my first job in government was with then County Mayor Claude Ramsey. I learned a great deal and spent a number of years, including when Commissioner Coppinger joined the commission, and later on went over to work, obviously, as the city attorney, and had a number of opportunities to work alongside Mayor Coppinger on a number of issues, whether it's the Volkswagen expansion, whether it's going after Alstom when they were in violation of their pilot agreement to help bring $6 million back to our community, or just on a myriad of issues. So for me, again, this is a continuation of the work and the relationship that I have with Mayor Coppinger and his administrators, who I had a chance to work with as well. And so when you talk about what this relationship looks like, it's going to be consistent, frequent meetings around issues that I know Chattanoogans want to see addressed. In my calls and conversations with Chattanoogans, they are worried about having a consistent, clear message around this pandemic. So that's something that we're going to be focused on, making sure we're providing. I will tell you that we should have a clear direction when it comes to economic development and the growth of this community, bringing good paying jobs. That's something where I know Mayor Coppinger and I can work to make sure we're aligned. As a community, we also need to address having a comprehensive talent strategy. Again, great work being done by a number of organizations throughout this city, whether it's through 2.0, the Future Ready Institutes, but there's not a comprehensive talent strategy. And Mayor Coppinger and I can sit and work with our community stakeholders to be able to do that, because when you do that, Michelle, you can be intentional about where you make those investments, how you invest, and where you invest. And when we think about, again, trying to move folks from poverty to middle class, we can be intentional about saying these particular communities, we're going to focus on it for credentials and growth and otherwise. And so this is something I'm most excited about, because this is just, again, how I already operate. Thank you.
Well, I think an advantage that I have is I'm a political independent. I tend to lean left a lot of my views socially, especially, but I can work with Mayor Coppinger. I can work with Governor Lee. I can work with Coppinger on a small business task force that we can stimulate the economy and recover from the pandemic. Something I would have done differently than Mayor Burke is I would have only had infectious disease specialists on my coronavirus task force. I wouldn't put personal friends or restaurateurs or lawyers. I would only have people that specialize with the specific needs of the pandemic. I'm a bridge builder. I know how to navigate the human terrain and work with all the different types of people. I get told all the time, Andrew, if you become mayor, you need to fix our schools. And I explain to them that, yes, I will do everything I can to fix our schools, but this is under the jurisdiction of Hamilton County. So I've reached out to school board representatives. I have talked to Austin Garrett because I think he's going to be the sheriff. And I've been building up alliances and friendships and relationships with people at the county, because I think this all comes down to interpersonal communication, which is a great class I took in college. You need to know how to talk to people and how to listen, and when to sit down sometimes and shut up, and when to stand up and speak out. And I'm going to fight for our schools to make sure that Tyner, Branyard, Howard have the same opportunities as other schools throughout the county. We need somebody to stand up for our city. And we also need somebody that works synergistically with the county. And I can do that. I've worked with Republicans before in Congress to help and Democrats to help fight for veterans' rights and to help get veterans their benefits that often get lost in the bureaucratic red tape that goes along with the federal government. I look forward to working with Mayor Coppinger and cutting through a lot of this bureaucratic red tape and working together for a common purpose. And I understand the unique challenges that this poses. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. It's a great question, and I've heard that all over neighborhoods in the city where I've gone to about there's so many mixed messages. I do have a great relationship with Mayor Coppinger. Mayor Coppinger served on our board. I think what is unique about the role that I've played at River City Company, I've worked with two different administrations and with city government and with Mayor Coppinger in county government. And the way we got things done is we have to find, again, how we all collaborate to move things forward. So I've already met and had conversations about how we do more long-range planning, how we think about things like infrastructure and growth and economic development pieces, how we can actually be more of a partner with the school system, how we can come alongside, what are those gaps. I've even met with all the area municipalities around us, because it's not just the county. Just because the line ends and it says City of Chattanooga, citizens don't know that. We need to be collaborating more in general and really look at this whole area as a regional growth. So that's what I've done my entire career, is work with all different types of people, and you have to put politics aside and do what's best for the community. I know that Mayor Coppinger has a heart for this community, and I know that he's looking forward to having a true partner in the city, and I look forward to being that partner.
Thank you. Our next question comes from one of our viewers on Facebook, and they would like to know the first 100 days in office. What does that look like? I know you've all been asked this before. So what do you see the first 100 days? And we're going to begin with Wade.
Hey, Michelle. So yes, I think a few of us have been asked that question a time or two. And what I've said is, and certainly there are things like the Office of Equity and Engagement that we'll kick off. We'll kick off work around our housing commission to get that started. We'll look at the pay plan that will be ending for our fire department. So there are a number of those things, and obviously our budgeting process will begin that with participatory budgeting and begin to again take a step back to figure out how do we address any challenges around the budget right now, which is projecting a shortfall. But my number one priority is going to be COVID recovery. I've released a plan. I was the first to release a COVID recovery plan, one focused on, you've heard me talk about collaboration with the county. I'm going to appoint day one a COVID response director who can help us not only collaborate with the county, but other community stakeholders. There are a lot of folks that we know are hurting in our community, where folks are facing evictions. We have small businesses that are being challenged right now. So we've got to not only have a person that's focused on addressing the policy side of this, but making sure that we're driving the change within city government to provide that support. That also means providing support to those who may be challenged when it comes to issues around childcare. We know that a number of us are facing some issues with this. So we've got to step in. These are small businesses as well. We've got to make sure we support to those individuals. And the last thing I would say with this is in collaborating with the county is to make sure that Chattanoogans get vaccinated. We know right now that there are a number of, especially Black and Brown communities, are not getting the vaccinations. And so we've got to work to do that. And that means providing access to city-owned facilities, including some of our community centers or other places that we would allow for vaccinations to happen. And as mayor, know that I'll get up there, I'll get my vaccination, so people know that this is something that is important that we've got to do to make sure we're recovering from this, not only strong, but also equitably. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew.
Yes, hello. My first 100 days in office, we're going to, first of all, create a more robust homeless coalition. We're going to bring in people that treat this like a 24/7 commitment and not a 9-to-5 job to get everybody a house. We're going to turn City Hall and every available government space into shelter for our homeless so that we can help them rehabilitate, get them jobs that pay livable wages, and monitor them closely. I'm going to institute a plastic bag tax, 10 cents per plastic bag, that's worked throughout the country in various places. And we're going to take that money from the plastic bag tax, put it into early childhood education, and put it into paying our first responders a livable wage. We're going to focus on pandemic response and recovery. We're going to make sure that we get vaccines out here. I believe in science. I've already been consulting with doctors throughout the pandemic that are on the front lines. We're going to make sure that we follow science and listen to our infectious disease specialists. Childcare is very important right now. There's still a lot of people that are dealing with virtual learning, and single mothers have to worry about whether they're going to go to work or stay home and watch their kids because they don't have access to affordable daycare. I want to help subsidize affordable daycare for single mothers. Participatory budgeting. We're going to have full participation in our budget and understand that the needs of each of our 9 districts are unique. And we're going to incorporate neighborhood associations and city council representatives to make sure that we have the best budget that works for all Chattanoogans. And finally, We are going to make sure that people know that we're going to fire every corrupt bureaucrat, and we're going to bring in auditors, and we're going to streamline our budget, and we're going to cut out all fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayer money. Thank you so much.
Hey, well, thank you. The first 100 days are not going to be the normal first 100 days, right? I mean, it's not business as usual at all. And we have small and medium-sized businesses that are hurting. And what we plan to do is, how do we jumpstart the economy? How do we bring resources out to the community? How do we identify what resources are there, and how do we leverage funds to make sure that they actually reach some of these businesses that are barely hanging on? So that's going to be the first thing that we do is really focus on how we jumpstart economy and helping small and medium-sized businesses. Thinking outside the box, how can the city be more creative? And that goes in line with, how do we reorganize government quickly and take away some of the barriers that we have right now? So small businesses that want to expand, making it easier for them to do that. It is, how do we actually attract more investment quickly and get projects moving? So I think we have a huge opportunity to really become a very nimble, quick government that is out there responsive to the people. We're not going to be on the third floor of City Hall. We're going to be out in the community, really understanding what resources are needed and how we get resources to them. We also have to work with the county on a vaccine rollout. I do think the city can play a role with how we actually use facilities to get vaccine rollouts more into the neighborhoods. There hasn't been a lot of coordination there, and by the time we get in office in April, we'll be further along. But I think that the city could play a huge role, whether we use the YFD centers and the community centers to actually start bringing some of those resources into the neighborhood. So I'm excited. There's a lot of opportunity, but we got to get going, and we'll be going quickly in April.
Well, if imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, then I leave all of these candidate forums feeling really, really flattered, because I love listening to other candidates present ideas that originated with me. It must mean that I'm on the right track. I'm doing good work, and I will continue to be the thought leader in this race. And I'm fine with other candidates following me. So my first 100 days. Let's start with transportation, because transportation is at the root of many of our problems. We don't have enough time in 2 minutes to go through that list. But in short, I will make CARTA free to ride for all people all the time. I will reroute the system so that buses go places that people need them to go. If you are a regular rider of CARTA and we make the system free to you, that will put between $600 and $1,000 a year in your pocket. That's real money that you can use for better housing, healthier food, and just to stimulate the local economy of your neighborhood. I will institute what I'm calling Mayor's Day Out, because in my canvassing across Chattanooga, what I've learned is that the people who most need the services and resources of government are the least likely to come to City Hall and ask for them. So as mayor, I will go to the neighborhoods at least one day a month. I'll take my entire executive team. We will canvass, we will knock on doors, and I'm particularly interested in our senior citizens. We have senior citizens who are living in deplorable conditions in some neighborhoods, and they need our help, and we've got to take government to them. We can't wait for them to come to us. And I've got many more things that I want to do in the first 100 days, and I will continue to outline those things. But we're going to have our track shoes on from day one. We're going to hit the ground running. There's so much work to be done, and we're up to the challenge.
Thank you. Wade?
I actually think you started with me on that one. I think we go to the next. I can talk more though. If you want to give me 5 more minutes, I'll be happy to.
No. So, I mean, all new administrations, and many of you have noted the new policy priorities you'd like to implement, not only in the first year, but in the first 100 days. But many of these, if not most, come with associated costs. Considering the impact of COVID on city revenues for the upcoming fiscal year, how are you planning where the city could cut expenditures or find cost savings or find new streams of revenue, and in order to provide funding for these new initiatives? And we're going to begin with Andrew.
All right, this is right up my alley. Plastic bag tax. This has worked all over the country. In Puerto Rico, they have it. In California, they have it. Washington, D.C., they have it. Now, I want you to understand that there are more pieces of plastic trash in the ocean than fish. This is a sustainability problem. This is an environmental travesty. We want people to use reusable canvas bags. But if you want a plastic bag, great, 10 cents. We take that money, we put it into paying our first responders and city employees a livable wage, and we put the money into fixing our infrastructure. We put the money into early childhood education. I'm also going to only be accepting a rookie cop salary of $34,000 a year. The remaining $128,000 of my salary is going to go directly and transparently to helping our people living in poverty. So that is $128,000 times 4, $512,000 that we're going to put in. It's been suggested that we look into a toll. I'm not saying that I would put in a toll, but I would be willing to study it, to commission a study to see how much revenue that could come in. There's many areas in our budget that we can streamline. And there has been fraud, waste, and abuse. There was a report that came out that roughly $5.59 million worth of LED lights went missing and cost the city. So we're going to make sure that we cut out fraud, waste, and abuse from our budget. We're going to incorporate the small plastic bag tax. And I'm only going to be taking a rookie cop salary because if I'm the mayor and I'm the leader of our fire and police departments, I don't expect or deserve to be paid any more than our heroes on the front lines. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. I mean, we definitely are going to have some budget constraints. And the first thing we've got to do is realign our priorities, making sure that we're taking care of basics, which we aren't right now. We have 1,400 nonprofits in the city that I don't believe we're leveraging their skill set. There's some things that we shouldn't take the lead on, that we really should empower nonprofits to do so. So it really is using my background with public-private partnerships as we look at how we solve problems and how we actually bring more investment and more partnerships to the table to help us with some of these projects. We also, I mean, we've got to go in and really look at what our priorities are. And we have a lot of opportunity to bring new investment. We have a lot of low-hanging fruit. And so that's the thing I'm going to be focused on, is how do we bring and create more investment? How do we realign priorities? And how do we actually focus on using some of these great, strong nonprofit partners to do some of the work that they do better than we do, as we move our city forward?
I think that our city government doesn't listen enough to our city workers. I believe that the people who do the jobs every day are the ones who know the changes that we need to become more efficient and to reduce costs throughout government. So one thing that I will do is I will implement channels of communication and programs that incentivize our own city workers to help us wring cost out of city government. I know they know how to do it. I've talked to workers and they've told me some of their ideas. Next, there are so many opportunities for increased revenue. Most people don't know that CARTA nets almost $1 million a year from operating the incline. And that's revenue that comes almost exclusively from tourists. Well, Norfolk, Virginia has a water taxi system that goes between Norfolk and Portsmouth. They charge $4 one way. They make a lot of revenue that, again, comes from tourists. Well, we've got 20 miles of the Tennessee River flowing right through the middle of town. Not only do I want to put a water taxi system on the Tennessee River, I want an electric water taxi system so that it's sustainable, it's friendly to the environment, and it's going to attract tourists. Another thing that we can do is we can make Moccasin Bend a national park. The studies that I've seen said that if we made Moccasin Bend a national park, then it would produce another 300,000 visits by tourists here every year. There are many ways that we can increase the revenue of the city of Chattanooga. We just have to be bold, we have to be innovative, and we've got to get rid of old school thinking and business as usual. Let's do something new.
So I think I'm the only candidate that has actually worked on a city budget, and I will tell you that you have been having to make those hard choices between a particular program to fund or not, and it's going to be a bit of a challenge if we're looking at an $8 million shortfall. So Michelle, you're spot on. I mean, these are real decisions that we know are impacting lives of Chattanoogans in a significant way. And we've just got to be intentional, again, rooted in equity and how we make some of these calls. And so, Mayor Burke and the administration started the budgeting for outcomes process, and there are some great things that we ought to admire from that. I mean, it is looking at there's a little bit more transparency, right? There's some accountability around the metrics. So those goals were certainly good. I think there's some opportunity there to improve the process. Part of it, though, is this BFO process can help us be a little bit more innovative. When we look at the data, it can help inform us where are those opportunities for cost savings, for streamlining areas within the city that could, in fact, produce some savings long term. The other side of this is, again, getting creative a bit. I think back to, again, the work I did with the Volkswagen expansion. We included an economic development lease payment in there that is producing and generating revenue that's now allowing us to provide grants to a lot of our small businesses that are being impacted now. We need to think about new ways of working with businesses and developers to generate revenue as well, so that we can support some of the programming that we know is important. And then lastly, again, I am a convener, and I am all about thinking about how can we be resourceful when resources are limited. And right now, I know that there are a lot of organizations that are leaning in. They are ready to work together. They're looking for leadership in helping us get through this pandemic stronger. And again, I think on the other side of this, we'll be better in many ways because we can do it from a place of equity, but also in this place of having that collaborative spirit that Chattanooga is known for. So thank you.
Thank you all. The next question is going to come again from our Facebook viewers, and it's a pretty straightforward question. Do you support the right of city employees to unionize? And we're going to begin with Kim White.
Hey, well, absolutely. I think that city employees have the right to actually, I'm going to sit down and talk to any city employees. Do I support that? I think that the first thing I'd want to do is figure out what the issue was and why didn't they feel like they had a voice at the table. So there's the right that they can, but I would say that I would think that we have a conversation that needs to be started, or one that should have started a long time ago if they feel like they need an additional voice. So my administration plans to be very open lines of communication, that we can sit down and talk to employees about their needs, and I would hope it wouldn't come to that.
Wow, there are a couple of sides to this question. First of all, I certainly support the right of city employees to organize and to form a union. They are represented, in a manner of speaking, by SEIU 205. But our state legislature prohibits municipal employees from being members of unions and having real collective bargaining. So what happens every year is that the mayor sits down with representatives of SEIU 205, and if he's in a good mood, well, then he throws a few trinkets their way. But there won't be real collective bargaining until we address issues of state preemption. And so I want to form a coalition of the mayors of Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and of course myself as the mayor of Chattanooga, because together we represent 65% of the state's population. It is time that we gave the state legislature and the governor some pushback, because this is one of those issues where we can't have true organized labor, true collective bargaining, true representation for the workers in the city unless we make some changes at the state level. And the last thing I will say is I am the only candidate on this call who has stood in city council side by side with the members of SEIU 205, asking for a minimum wage of $15 an hour. I attend lots of labor events, and my vision is pretty good, and I've not seen any of the other candidates here at any of those labor events. So again, do you go with the candidate who actually shows up, or do you go with the promises of other candidates?
So I helped negotiate the MOU with the SEIU. Monty's right, there are some issues with state law, but that does not stop us from being able to work and alongside and partner and be thought partners with our employees. And so that is something that we will continue to do. I will continue to do as mayor. More than that, I'm going to make sure that we have frequent employee roundtables. We've got to make sure we're listening directly to our employees, our team members, to get their perspectives and understand how we can do better as an employer. We've got to have that voice show up, and more than that, their voices have to show up in the work that we produce. There's one example I think of when when employees were going through disciplinary matters and it became at times rather lengthy of a process that impacted both the employees as well as departments. I pulled together the leaders of the various unions at the city and say, can we address this issue? Can we streamline this process? And what they will tell you is their voices were heard. They were all in agreement in this particular process that we were able to solve and streamline. And that's the kind of mayor I'm going to be. Continuing to show up, making sure that, again, voices are being a part of everything that we do. And we'll build that in as part of how we do business, Michelle. Thank you.
To answer the question in short, yes, I 100% support city employees unionizing. Monty's correct. There are some state laws that make this difficult and challenging. I also want to collaborate with the Big Four, with the mayors of Memphis, Nashville, and Knoxville, and push back in the state, like Monty discussed. Absolutely, we need to advocate. There's a lot of spending power. We stimulate the economy of the state of Tennessee. We need to be able to talk to Governor Lee, and we need to advocate for our workers. It's been a main pillar of our platform is that we're going to raise first responder salaries. And I don't want any city employee to be living below the federal poverty line. I don't want them to be anywhere near the federal poverty line. I'm the only candidate that's saying I'm only going to accept a rookie cop's salary, $34,000 a year, and donating the rest of my salary to needy causes in our city. That's because I don't think that I'm above our workers. I am in the fight for them, and I'll get paid a bigger salary once our workers get paid a bigger salary. I believe that that's true leadership, and it's how you lead by example. I believe in equity. I believe in fairness. I'm very transparent, and I believe in communication. Everybody's going to have an equal opportunity and seat at our table, and we're going to make sure that our workers are taken care of. And I love unions. Unions are the reason why we have a weekend. Healthcare is not optional. Healthcare is a human right. Every worker should have affordable healthcare, and we're going to make sure in our administration that everybody has access to affordable healthcare. And I might have to advocate on a national level. We're going to think big. We're going to think bold. And there's more ways to skin a cat. And I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight for our city employees and every citizen of our city in Chattanooga. Thank you.
We've talked a lot about issues of race and equity, but I'd like to focus a little bit more on institutional and structural racism, particularly within the city government itself. Do you believe that it's a problem in our city government? And if so, what specifically would you do as mayor to rectify those specific problems that you see in the city, in our city? And we begin with Monty.
Well, we have racism that permeates our entire society. And as human beings, we all have our own biases. So it would be naive to think that inside of our government that is run by people, that we don't have institutional racism. We don't have systemic biases. So yes, it's going to be there. I think a lot of the problem is that the history and culture of government. I mean, if you look at the patronage system, where someone gets a job, then they get a family member a job, and then a friend gets a job, or you work on a city council person's or a mayor's campaign, and then you get a job. Well, we are so far away from a meritocracy in many respects that it's not surprising that these biases are there. I don't believe that that we have issues really of serious individual racism. I think what we've created is a system that works so efficiently that it doesn't need to be run by racists, because the system is racist. So what we need to do is reevaluate how we hire, how we promote, how we extend opportunity. I want to provide a preference to locally owned businesses in the procurement process. I want to provide a preference to minority and women-owned businesses in our city's procurement process, because the disparity study that has been released by the city shows that women and minority get only a fraction of the business from the city that white-owned companies get. So we got to change that.
Thank you. Wade?
Thanks, Michelle. So where we recruit, how we recruit, who's developed, who's picked for what, all of that has to do, in many ways, it could have to do with bias creeping into the system. There's no question about it. I think I'm the only person that actually has created a strategy to help address issues around inclusion and diversity and equity in a real way at an organization. This approach of addressing issues of bias and other issues throughout the city is something that is going to be a priority of mine. You asked about the 100-day plan. One of the first things I'll do is create our Office of Equity and Engagement. And what that office will be charged with doing is making sure that there are inclusive and equitable practices in every city department, whether it's HR and how, again, they make decisions in terms of where we recruit and how we recruit, what interview questions, how bias creeps up in that, or CDOT, or Public Works and how we engage our residents. Equity shows up there as well. And so we've got to be, again, intentional about this work. We've got to be intentional about how we embed these practices. We've got to be intentional how we make decisions even around budget. This is why I've said I want to have an equity assessment, impact assessment for major budget items. So people know, again, how is this impacting the community in a significant way? This is also important to make sure that we have some transparency and accountability. It won't be enough that we talk about getting again, embedding these practices in our procurement process around increasing women and minority-owned businesses and other dimensions of diversity. What's going to be even more important is that we come back and report out how we're performing in these areas, and that the public knows that we're doing exactly what we say we're going to do. And if we're not, then how do we begin to address those issues and correct those issues, and again, remain true to our commitments? Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew?
I've got a proven track record of fighting for civil rights for over a decade. I've marched in the rain with Dr. Cornel West after attending federal court in White Plains, New York, after my friend's father was called the N-word by corrupt cops and executed in his own home during a medical emergency. Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. was his name. I continue to fight for Kenny Chamberlain Sr., and I stand by Kenny Chamberlain Jr. I spoke in the Trayvon Martin rally in Times Square to thousands of people, and I stopped the police from coming in and arresting people who wanted to be heard. People will always be heard in our administration. I plan on having the most diverse administration in Chattanooga history, not just of minorities, but with women, with LGBTQ citizens, with transgender citizens. I've been a gay rights activist for years before it was trendy, and I stood up and took my licks when I advocated for transgender service members to be in our military and serving as they rightly deserve to. I believe in what Nikola Tesla said, we are all one, only our egos and beliefs separate us. I believe in the political genius of Abraham Lincoln, who assembled a team of his rivals. And I recognize that Monty and Wade Hinton and Dr. Woods are experts in this field. And I have no problem bringing them into our administration because I know that they can tackle this head on. Yusuf Hakim commissioned the disparity study. There are racial disparities. It deals with economic inequality. It deals with the criminal justice system. We're going to make sure that everybody is treated equal. Our campaign, in essence, is about equal opportunity. And right now, people are not being treated equally in our city. And our campaign, our administration, is going to end the war on the poor and declare a war on poverty. And many of our minority citizens are living in poverty. We're going to get them livable wages. We're going to keep our ear to the ground. We are the most grassroots campaign out of anybody that's running. And that's because I believe that we must seek to understand before we are understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. I mean, unfortunately, yes, I do believe that it exists. We all have bias. I'm sure it's in City Hall also. I think we've tried to build equity into our policies, and we've got to be more intentional about how we actually move forward. And two of the areas that we're really going to take a focus on is our hiring practices, looking at that with fresh eyes and making sure that we are intentional to have equity and diversity in those policies and in our procurement policies. I've heard over and over again how we don't have enough minority participation, but some of that is because we've put the barriers out there. We need to actually, how do we actually grow our own and make sure that we are representative in our in-city government? So yes, I think it is, we have to acknowledge it. Again, we've built that into our existing policies, and we're going to be very intentional about that in my administration.
Thank you. We've referenced a number of times the way federalism works in Tennessee, and that local government is preempted by the state. And of course, what that means is that state law can override any kind of local policy on issues that in other states and other places may be seen as local issues, things such as gun control, minimum wage, unionization, that the states are able to pass policies that prohibit local governments from controlling or regulating these things. You've referenced this before, but could you talk more systemically about what you think the mayor's role should be, if any, in working to lobby the state against these preemptive measures? Some of you have touched on it, but I think we can go a little deeper, and we begin with Wade.
Thanks, Michelle. So that I am unfortunately very familiar with, because even as we were looking at issues like legalizing marijuana, the state stepped in to say this is something you can do. Even as we looked at issues around things such as rideshare or Uber and other spaces, this is something the state stepped in and said you can't do. EPB's extension into other parts of the community in the region, this is something that the state stepped in and said you cannot do. And so again, from my experience, there is an opportunity for us to identify those areas where we should fight. There are also, what I will tell you is, there's the opportunity to understand where we engage other messengers to fight. as well. And so what I've seen be successful is you have groups like the Women's Fund or groups that are focused on particular issues that are important to our community that are better messengers at times. Knowing that at the state level, there is a rural-urban challenge, sometimes it is identifying who's the right messenger to make sure that we can get these issues through. Now, that's not to say that we don't take own issues, and there have been a couple of communities across the country that have taken on their state capitals when it comes to home rule issues, and so we should identify those areas. But again, a part of this is also making sure you know how to work across the aisle and lobby and work with, whether it's folks again across the aisle to try to solve some of these issues. I'll never forget Councilman Henderson and I, and we're of different political persuasions, but we work together to try to address issues around short-term vacation rentals, where the state stepped in and they were going to essentially say, well, Chattanooga can't do it that way, and they did this across the state. But because we worked together, we were able to have the Chattanooga particular ordinance in place. And that's the kind of work we've got to do to really address these issues. Again, working across the aisle, making sure we identify the right messenger and fight on those issues where we know we have opportunity.
As the mayor of Chattanooga, there's going to be times where we're going to have to stand up to the county, and we're going to have to work with the county. There's going to be a lot of times where we're going to have to stand up and we're going to have to find common ground and advocate for the best interests of our city when dealing with the state of Tennessee. I'm a political independent, and I've got friends on every end of the spectrum. I've worked in over 70 countries doing private investigations and executive protection, putting security details, investigating fraud and other crimes throughout the country, throughout the world. And I've had to work with host nation assets. I've had to work with politicians in other countries. I've had to work with royal families. I've also had to deal with people that are living in extreme poverty if we're doing a rescue mission to get kids away from human trafficking. There's a lot of different aspects. There's fluid situations. One difference that between me and Mayor Burke is we saw with the pandemic, the big four, Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis, and Chattanooga, at one point had the authority from the governor to come up with their own COVID plan. And I thought that Nashville's COVID response plan looked outstanding. And there was friction between Mayor Burke and Governor Lee. And Mayor Burke went on CNN's Don Lemon and said some disparaging things about the governor. And I think that hurt his standing with the governor. And shortly thereafter, they lost the authority to be able to have the mask mandate. I'm going to work synergistically behind the scenes with Governor Lee. I can work with Republicans. I can also work at the federal level. One of the highlights of my campaign was talking to Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who called me on the phone, and we talked about Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail in detail and dissected it. I can work with state officials. I can work with the big four. We're going to have to unionize the big four cities in Tennessee to be able to stand up and advocate for our individual cities. I'm for legalizing, definitely decriminalizing, hopefully legalizing marijuana. It just makes sense. I would love Governor Lee to do a statewide mask mandate. I stand on the side of science, and I've got a proven track record of working across the aisle. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. I will always be a strong advocate for what's best for our city. But there is an art of negotiation. And part of what's going on right now is we've had a broken relationship with our state for quite some time. And it is making sure that we do have a good relationship, not only with our state, but with other city mayors, with the county. And Wade, you had a great point. It is like, how do we actually get to where we need to go? And sometimes it's straight on, and sometimes it's sideways, and you have to just work the deal. So I think we want to do what's right, and we will do what's right for the city, but sometimes there's some battles that you fight and some that you're going to end up losing, but it's a negotiation of how we actually work together. So I think the bottom line of this is we've got to have a relationship, and we've got to have a strong relationship with our state. We're leaving a lot of money and opportunity on the table right now because we don't. And not only with our state, but with other municipalities. So that's something I know that I can bring to the table, and look forward to the opportunity to do so.
This is pretty simple for me. this is about having a spine. It's about having a backbone. It's about standing up to the ridiculous constitutional overreach of our state legislature. In Chattanooga, we have this representative form of government with a city council that gives more people a voice in our government. Well, was that given to us? No, it wasn't given to us. Some of our citizens, some of our African American citizens had to go to court and had to sue the city of Chattanooga. And the courts decided that what we had before was wrong and that what we needed was something new. I am the only candidate in this race who has said that if push comes to shove, I will sue the state of Tennessee. I am willing to abide by the ruling of a court, because we have been delivered justice by the courts in the past, and I believe we can be delivered justice by the courts in the future. Now, do I want to do this alone? No, I don't want to do this alone. I would like to form a coalition, as I've said before, with the mayors of Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and of course myself as the mayor of Chattanooga. We represent 65% of the state's population, and I believe that if we work together, that we can exert enough political leverage against the governor and the state legislature to push back on state preemption. So I've got a spine, I've got a backbone, and I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to fight for the rights of the citizens of Chattanooga, and I'm not going to be bullied by the state of Tennessee.
Thank you. One of the goals of the last administration had been to really address the question of homelessness in the city of Chattanooga with collaborations through nonprofits and a number of things that many of you have talked about. Yet we see during the pandemic, this population is growing. How would you address this? What would be the plan? What would be the approach, building on what's been done before and taking things in new directions? And one of our viewers on Facebook is specifically interested if any of you have thought about the tiny houses as a possibility, or tiny homes as a possibility of addressing this question. And we begin with Andrew.
Yes, I actually posted an article about the tiny homes, and Patrick Mahomes is one of my favorite football players because he actually builds in his off time shelter homeless veterans. So I greatly admire him. I volunteered at the homeless veterans outreach program that the city had. And from my experience, I realized that we need to build alliances with landlords so that we can get background checks waived and give these people a second opportunity, because I've gone into Patton Towers with somebody who is looking forward to finally having a home after decades so that his daughter could come over, and he left in tears. And I had to console him and talk him out of suicide because he got rejected from a felony from the 1980s. And he had been looking forward to having a house of his own for months. And he was heartbroken. What I noticed is that there's a lot of cronyism going on with this program. It's well funded. It's a great framework in essence, but you have people that have a lot of fancy college degrees on the wall, but not a lot of empathy. What we're going to do is we're going to hire people that used to be homeless and understand the unique challenges of dealing with this, of recovering from perhaps substance abuse, from navigating how to recover from bad credit, from maybe a criminal history, domestic violence instance, whatever happened to them, that was the bad break that put them into this situation. So yes, we're going to have the people with the master's degrees and the PhDs and the mental health care professionals, but we're also going to have people that treat this like a 24/7 commitment and not just a 9-to-5 job. Sometimes I would go out at midnight and I would give homeless people a new pair of shoes or a new suit that I had that I didn't need anymore. And that gave them hope. That would inspire them to say, okay, I'm going to go and try to get this job because now I've got new shoes and I've got a new suit. So it's the little gestures. It's the showing people that the government cares. I believe that the government should help people, not harm people. And in essence, that's what our campaign is about. We're going to help elevate people out of poverty. Thank you.
Right. So right now there are about 40 organizations that are working on the homeless issue. And Mayor Burke has done a great job about trying to get them to coalesce and work together. So that was a good beginning. Signal Centers was just given the contract to be the backbone agency of that, to try to undergird it and see where those gaps are. So one of the first things I'm going to do is jump in that with leadership to look at what are the gaps. The number that's been given to me is that we have 300 chronically homeless families. And as a city, we have solved tremendous issues. There's no doubt in my mind that if the goal out there is to solve housing for 300 chronically homeless families, that we can figure out with 40 agencies working on it. We have a lot of transient homeless. Also, that's a whole nother issue we need help with mental health and addiction treatment. The affordable housing piece of it is another side of it because it's a very complex issue. Again, we have a very robust affordable housing policy, and we don't allow things like accessory dwellings and garage apartments. I mean, we need to look at some of our codes and how we actually can create more affordable housing, because that is the goal, right? Is to put them in a house. So what can we do out of the box? Knoxville's done a great job on a recoding program that we're really looking to mirror here, and how we get more flexibility with the types of houses that developers are able to build. But again, 40 groups are already working in the homeless arena. We've got to figure out how we all coordinate services better. And I do believe we have a good start to that with the program that Mayor Burke has started.
So there are several ways to look at the homeless community. We have the chronically homeless, and what we find when we look at that group is that often there are issues of mental health and substance abuse that contribute to the homelessness. So at its base, the solution to homelessness is a home, but it's more complex than that. We have to also address issues of mental health and substance abuse. Currently in Hamilton County, we have the FUSE program, which I think combines a lot of resources, but we aren't helping enough people. That program needs to be expanded. The city is currently a partner along with the county, but we've got to increase our partnership there. Then we have people who are temporarily homeless, or they're somehow in transition. What would be helpful here is if we had a way of identifying people before they become homeless, before they go over what's called the housing cliff, because it costs a lot less money to stabilize a family and keep them in their current housing than it costs to replace that housing once they have become homeless. So we've got to find ways to identify people who are in jeopardy of losing their homes. That is a win for the city. It's a win for taxpayers, and it's a win for people who can avoid being homeless. This is not an area where we need to do 3 or 4 things. This is one of those issues where we need to do 30 or 40 things. And, we've got to convene people, we've got to convene agencies, and we've got to work out solutions.
So we know right now there are families that are on the edge of losing their homes. We know that this pandemic has put additional strain on those who were already. What we've got first is to make families in their homes right now. And that's why, again, our top priority is to make sure we get through this pandemic in a way that is stronger, but also equitable. When we think about the Chattanooga way, There are a couple of different approaches. One is this approach of we all come together and we hold hands and we come up with a solution. The other Chattanooga way is everybody's doing their own thing and looking for the credit. And so I do know that there have been some great efforts to try to address this. And what I've said is let's have it be simple. There's someone that we work with, or you encounter that is homeless. There should be one place that they can call, or one place that they can go to help address their issues. One-stop shop. That's it. It should be pretty easy. In addition to that, we should be able to provide support for housing, whether it's transitional or permanent housing. This goes back to the affordable housing issue. This goes back to a number of other things that we need to make sure we're investing in. That gets to our housing strategy and identify when and where we invest and how we invest that. Lastly, we've got to have wraparound services. We've got to have the wraparound services that are going to address those behavioral issues, health issues that might be at bay, but also job readiness and getting folks ready to get back into folks who may be working, but those who may not be working, to get them onto some payrolls and to have gainful employment. That's the kind of support we want to make sure we're providing, but it shouldn't be as complicated. We want to make sure that, again, if you have a need, you have a place to call and you get the service that can help support you in making progress.
All right, so our last question before we go to conclusions, and we're going to limit this one to 1 minute, but it's a simple question. At the end of your administration, what would you wish to be your legacy to the city and the people of Chattanooga? And we're going to begin with Kim.
Thank you. My wish is that we have created opportunity and paths for every single person in our city. It's an audacious goal. I think it's how do we create hope in the future, and it touches every single citizen in our city.
I think the answer to this question is simple. I would like for Chattanoogans to make more money, to accumulate more wealth. I would like the disparity between Black, brown, and low income residents and white residents to close. I think that if we could all just make more money, that a lot of our problems would be alleviated. I also want to leave as my legacy that I have returned power to the people, that we have gone away from a culture where we believe that there are people on the mountains who control everything, and that we in the valley, we everyday people, don't have any power whatsoever. So let us take back the power. And if that's my legacy, and if neighborhoods are thriving because they have taken back the power, if families are thriving because they've taken back the power, then that's a great legacy.
As I've said, we have been the scenic city, the gig city, smart city, all of these different cities. Let's be an inclusive and equitable city. Let's be intentional about it. Let's make sure at the end of these 4 years, my first 4 years, that it feels different. It looks different when you go downtown, when you're in these restaurants. You have that sense of belonging no matter where you are or who you are, what part of town you come from. This is your city and you know it. And you know that it's invested in you. That means that in your neighborhoods, it's showing up in how we invest in you. It means when you go to the community centers, it looks different because we've invested in you. That means when you go for these job opportunities with some of our employers and small businesses, it looks different because we've invested and we've done things to work together. Our kids feel different. And so again, thinking about my experience growing up here, not knowing if I would come back because I didn't have that sense of belonging, my daughter won't have that issue. And our kids won't have that issue because of the work that will start in April. And I know that we're going to make more Chattanoogans, or have Chattanoogans with more opportunities, and more minority and women-owned businesses are going to have storefronts in our city. So we'll be a different city, and it's going to feel different.
I've got 3 children. My daughter Zoe is 9. My sons Alex and Andrew are 12 and 13. They are everything to me. I want this city to be better for my kids and for my elderly parents. My dad's a Vietnam veteran. He struggled with the complications of Agent Orange, and I've overcome a lot of adversity. I got into this race when I went to the West Side, into the projects, and I was volunteering for the city. And I saw a little girl about the same age as my daughter sleeping on the floor. And I was bringing furniture over to them from the food bank. I'm sorry, from the furniture bank. And I saw her sleeping on the floor without a mattress. And that bothered me. And I said, where is a bed for these kids? They're in public housing. Get them mattresses down here right now. And I was told by the city that they're up in Cleveland, Tennessee. And I said, okay, I'm going to go get the mattresses. And they said, well, you don't have the proper license. You can't go and get the mattresses. And I used profanity. I said, well, then screw this. I'm buying the mattresses. So my legacy I want is that every kid is going to be off the floor. No kid is going to go to bed hungry. And every person is going to be living with basic dignity and human rights. Thank you.
Okay, so to wrap up this invigorating discussion, we're going to hear concluding remarks from each of our candidates, and we'll go back to we're back to the original order. And so, Monty Bruell, would you give us your concluding comments? And we have 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Michelle. What I know about these candidate forums is that it can be like herding cats. And so congratulations to you for doing a great job. Megan, this has been the clearest representation of the time remaining that we've had at one of these forums. So it made it really easy to know when I needed to continue talking past my time. Rodney, thank you. I love working with you at the Democratic Party. And, we often have these arguments about who's a Democrat, who's not a Democrat. All I can say is I'm the kind of Democrat who goes to party meetings, who elects officers, and who buys a table at the Keefaw for dinner. So I think that's a pretty good record of being a good Democrat here. Let me just say that Superman and Superwoman are not coming to save us. But the good news is that we can be our own Supermen and Superwomen. We just have to reject the foolishness of the past. We have to be willing to assume personal responsibility and to rise up. Because I know that we have within ourselves all it takes to make Chattanooga the best that it can be. And as your mayor, I want to be your servant. I want to be your partner. But every day, I want to be your champion. I will bring the fight on your behalf, whether it's fighting poverty, fighting addiction, or fighting the state of Tennessee. I will bring the fight. So thank you very much. I'm Monty Bruell, and I want to be your mayor.
Next, we'll hear from Wade Hinton.
Thanks, Michelle. Again, I want to thank you and Rodney and Megan. And Maggie was on here a little earlier. Thank you all for your work and effort in pulling this together this evening. It's always good to see the candidates as well. Thank you for this evening. So listen, I think this ultimately boils down to what kind of city do we want to be? What kind of city do we want to be? And for me, I recognize and appreciate that my journey, being the first in my family to graduate from college, growing up in a community that in many ways was designed to be forgotten in how it looks, is my journey was the exception. And the kind of city that I want to be is where that's the expectation for every kid, no matter where you grow up, whether it's the West Side or if it's Lookout Valley, whether it's in East Lake, that you know that this is a city that believes in you, that invests in you. That's the kind of city I want to live in. We say that we are the best town ever, but that's not everybody feels that way. We know the stats, we know the data. We can look around, we see it. Ultimately, know this, that you're going to have a mayor that has not forgotten, that understands the challenges, that will bring more voice to around the table, that not only brings voices, but also make sure that those ideas, those solutions show up in what we do. That's what I've done. I'm the only person that has done that. I'm the only person that's has actually worked to bring thousands of jobs. I'm the only person that's worked to create tools that you hear candidates talking about in terms of addressing issues like affordable housing. And that work for me doesn't stop. That work is going to continue and do it in such an impactful way that more Chattanoogans will know that we believe in them. And I'm excited about this. And I'm going to ask each of you, as early voting starts today, that you go to Election Commission or wherever you can vote and vote for Wade Hinton. Let's make history together, Chattanooga.
Andrew McLaren.
Well, that's definitely tough to follow. Wade Hinton is a legend. He really is. It's an inspirational story coming from where he came from to, being the city attorney. Monty Bruell came up today and gave me chicken when I was at the election commission today, and just a really nice person. So and obviously Kim White is just, she's a powerhouse in the city of Chattanooga. It's an honor to be in the shadow of giants. And people tell me, Andrew, why do you think you're electable? You're younger than a lot of the candidates. You're less experienced than a lot of the candidates. I think it's not your time. You're ahead of your time, Andrew. And I say, well, you know what? I am younger. I am maybe less experienced, but what better time is it to fight for our firefighters, to make sure that they get a livable wage? What better time is it to stand up for our people living in poverty and end the war on the poor and declare a war on poverty and dig people out of their hardships and fight for people? I might be younger, I might be inexperienced, but I've been a fighter. And I fought for my country in Liberia during the Civil War in Liberia. I fought for my country in Iraq. I've fought for my community. I've done nation building across the world. And it's time to do nation building right here in Chattanooga. It's time to fight for my children, for my elderly parents, for my friends, for my neighbors, for all of our Chattanoogans. So I might be ahead of my time, but I'll never live in the past. Our ideas are bold. They are new. They are futuristic. And when John F. Kennedy was president, they said that he wasn't ready. He was a Catholic. People were worried about his allegiance to the Pope. It was a new thing. When Barack Obama, somebody with an African last name of mixed race, became president, they told him, Barack Obama, you're not experienced enough. You're ahead of your time. I believe that we need to think ahead of our time. We need to think of sustainability in the future. And I will be the most cutting edge candidate that takes on the status quo, that cuts through bureaucratic red tape, that says enough is enough. We will not have cronyism anymore. And we're going to stand up for the people. I know you'll see my peace symbols all over the city. Peace and love, power to the people. Amen.
And Kim White.
Boy, this is a hard group to be the closer to. Thank you all for the opportunity on a long day of early voting, and want to encourage everybody to get out and vote. Our city is at a critical crossroads. We have a lot of challenges. There's never been a time where we need a seasoned leader with a history of success. I have a history of success building teams, collaborations, and partnerships to solve big problems. The business community has come beside me. The nonprofit community has come beside me. They've seen my work, and I've been encouraged to use my voice in a way to touch the entire city. I want to use my successful track record of bringing investment and opportunity to downtown and use that to bring it to all parts of our city. I have the background to solve issues like affordable housing and job recruitment. I can come alongside all different kinds of people and leaders to build coalitions, and that's what I plan on doing. I'm someone that loves the city. I moved here in 2003 without a job, knowing that I wanted to make a difference in a city that I love, and I've done that. I've jumped in with both feet. So I look at this as civic leadership. Sometimes you find your path, and sometimes your path finds you, and I believe this is my path, and I look forward to making a difference in a community that means so much to me. I'd love to have your vote, love to have your support. We need people to get out and vote. Let's show everyone that Chattanoogans do care about their city, and they're going to come out and vote in droves. So thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you all. I have to say, as a political scientist, after a very long fall and a rough January, it is good to see the promise of democracy and the way in which self-governance really gives us hope. And so I want to thank you. And now I'd like to turn this over to Rodney Strong.
Thank you, Dr. Deerdorf. And thank you to all the candidates who participated in tonight and on Monday night in our forum on Monday night. I know it is an effort for you to find the time to do this with all that you're doing, particularly with this being the first day of early voting. I know most of you are probably out there pounding the pavement and reaching out to those voters. So I really appreciate the effort. And I also appreciate the sacrifice you're making by putting yourself forward. Of course, as you know, at the end of the day, there will be one who is elected mayor, but each of you have shown that you are true leaders in Chattanooga. So I certainly hope that even if you don't reach your goal this time, that you remain invested in the community, you continue to be involved, because with your leadership and your help, Chattanooga will indeed be a better community for all of us. I do want to mention that D'Angelo Davis, who had been invited tonight, had sent his regrets. He was unable to join us due to a campaign conflict that arose. We did invite Christopher Dahl and Christopher Long, who were unable to be with us tonight. We also did reach out to Monty Bell, but were unable to arrange for him to be with us. But between tonight's forum and the Monday night forum, the voters have a chance to listen to 11 of you. This will be broadcast and available on Facebook. And also we're going to put it on YouTube Live. So for those voters who are trying to decide who to choose from, they'll have an opportunity to educate themselves and learn about each and every one of you. So remember that early voting has started today. It was not quite as crowded as it was back in November, but let's make it get crowded by the time early voting is done. And of course, election day is March 2nd. So we wish all of you the best as you continue in your campaign, and wish everyone the best as we take the end of this evening. So good night and good luck.